Most of the things you think are hard aren't actually hard. You've just been gaslit by an industry that profits from your helplessness. Not because you're weak, but because that story benefits someone else. They've convinced you that basic autonomy is a special skill, so they can sell you the solution. Today, we're taking that power back. Let's start with something that looks impressive for absolutely no good reason: the riffle and bridge shuffle. You've seen it 1,000 times in movies. Someone splits a deck of cards, the cards cascade down like a waterfall, and suddenly that person looks smooth, confident, maybe even dangerous. Most people see that and immediately think, yeah, I could never do that. That assumption is wrong. The riffle shuffle isn't hard. It's just been made to look mysterious because people try to be fancy way too early. Here's what actually happens when most beginners try it. They grip the cards too tight, move too fast, and expect their hands to magically know what to do. The result? Cards flying everywhere like confetti at a party nobody wanted to attend. That's not failure. That's step one. All you're really doing is splitting the deck in half and letting gravity do most of the work. Hold each half like you're holding two tiny burgers. Nothing dramatic. Thumbs on the inner corners, fingers supporting the outside. Then slowly lift your thumbs and let the cards fall. Not forcefully, not aggressively, just enough so they release a few at a time. At first, it's going to feel awkward. Your cards won't fall evenly. Some will stick, some will jump. That's normal. Every single person's first shuffle looks bad. The difference between someone who can shuffle and someone who can't is about an hour of practice. The bridge part, even easier. Once the cards have fallen together, you gently bend the deck inward and let it snap back into shape. That's it. If you've ever bent a ruler on a desk and let it go, congratulations, you already understand the physics behind it. The biggest mistake people make is rushing. This isn't a speed contest. You're not auditioning for a magician's convention. Slow hands learn faster than fast hands. Another thing nobody tells you, new cards are terrible to practice with. Fresh decks are slippery and stiff, like trying to walk on freshly waxed floors in socks. Use old cards. They're broken in, forgiving, and won't punish you for mistakes. Here's the part that matters most. Once your hands learn this motion, you don't forget it, ever. It becomes automatic. You stop thinking about it, and your hands just do it. That's why people who know how to shuffle always seem confident doing it. Not because they're talented, but because they passed the awkward phase you never stuck around for. This isn't a special skill. It's just controlled dropping. And once you realize that, the magic disappears in a good way. Juggling looks like one of those skills you're either born with or you're not. You see someone casually tossing 3 balls in the air, smiling, and your brain immediately says, nope, not for me. Is really accented to this. But here's the truth. Juggling isn't about keeping things in the air. It's about letting them fall in a controlled way. That's it. Most people think juggling means handling multiple objects at the same time. That's the illusion. In reality, you're only ever dealing with one object at a time. The others are just falling through the air, waiting their turn. Gravity is doing most of the work. You're just interrupting it. Here's why juggling feels intimidating. Your brain hates the idea of dropping things. Dropping feels like failure. So before you even try, your brain steps in and says, let's not embarrass ourselves. And just like that, you quit before you start. But every juggler drops things, all the time. The difference is they don't treat dropping as failure, they treat it as practice. If you want to understand juggling, start with one object. A ball, a sock, an orange, it doesn't matter. Hold it in your right hand and toss it to your left in a smooth arc. Not straight across, not straight up, an arc. The top of that arc should be around eye level. Then catch it with your left hand. Do it again and again. Your only goal is consistency. Same height, same landing spot. That single throw is the foundation of juggling. Once that feels natural, you add a second object, not by throwing faster, but by throwing earlier. This is the part people mess up. They wait too long. By the time they throw the second ball, the first one is already coming down, and everything collapses. Juggling isn't fast. It's early. You throw the second object before the first one reaches the top of its arc. That's it. That's the secret. It feels wrong at first because your instincts are late. With practice, your timing adjusts. When you move to 3 objects, nothing fundamentally changes. You're still only throwing one thing at a time. Each object spends more time in the air than in your hands. For most of the routine, you're literally just standing there watching things fall. That's why juggling looks impressive. It's not because it's complex, it's because it's counterintuitive. And here's the part nobody tells you. You don't need patience, talent, or coordination. You just need to be okay with dropping things for a while. The moment you stop treating drops as mistakes, juggling stops being scary. This isn't a circus skill, it's a timing exercise. And once your brain understands the pattern, it clicks surprisingly fast. You weren't bad at juggling. You were just afraid of the floor. Somewhere in your closet, there's probably a shirt you like but don't wear anymore. Not because it's ugly, not because it doesn't fit, but because a button fell off. That shirt is winning. Big clothing companies love that shirt. They're hoping you look at it, sigh dramatically, and decide it's easier to buy a new one than deal with whatever mysterious process sewing is supposed to be. Here's the truth they don't want you to think about. Sewing a button is not a craft. It's not an art form. It's not a special talent passed down through generations of magical grandmothers. It's stabbing fabric in a simple pattern. That's it. If you can draw a straight line, if you can connect dots, if you can poke something repeatedly without panicking, you can sew a button. People imagine sewing as this complicated process with tiny movements, perfect precision, and years of practice. That idea didn't come from reality, it came from marketing. If fixing clothes feels intimidating, you're more likely to replace them instead. A basic sewing kit costs less than a cup of coffee. Inside it are 3 things you actually need: a needle, thread, and scissors. No machine, no table setup, no mood lighting. Just those 3. Here's what sewing a button actually looks like. You thread the needle, you push it up through the fabric and one of the buttonholes. Then you push it back down through another hole. You repeat that a few times until the button stops wobbling. Tie it off. Done. That's the entire process. It won't be pretty the first time. It doesn't have to be. The button's job is not to win beauty contests. Its job is to stay attached to your shirt. And it will. What makes this especially ridiculous is that sewing used to be a basic life skill. Not because people were more talented back then, but because they didn't have the option to throw things away as easily. Fixing stuff wasn't a hobby. It was normal. At some point, that changed. Sewing got rebranded as something extra, something optional, something best left to professionals. Meanwhile, clothes quietly got cheaper and worse, designed to fall apart just fast enough to feel inconvenient. Here's the upside no one talks about. When you fix your own clothes, even in a small way, something shifts. You stop seeing objects as disposable. You stop feeling helpless over minor problems. You gain this quiet confidence that says, I don't need to replace everything the moment it breaks. And no, you don't need to start making your own jackets or tailoring suits. This isn't about becoming a master sewer. It's about refusing to believe that a missing button is somehow beyond your abilities. Sewing isn't complicated. It was just removed from your education and sold back to you as a service. Once you realize that, picking up a needle feels a lot less intimidating and a lot more empowering. A lot of people think they're bad at cooking. They struggle to cut tomatoes. Onions crush instead of slice. Meat slips around the cutting board like it's trying to escape. And eventually, they reach the conclusion. I guess I'm just not good in the kitchen. That conclusion is wrong. In most cases, the real problem is much simpler. Your knife is dull, not broken, not cheap, just dull. Here's something most people never learn. When a knife stops cutting well, it usually doesn't need to be replaced. It doesn't even need to be sharpened right away. It just needs to be honed. That long metal rod that came with your knife set, the one sitting in the block collecting dust, that's not decoration. It's not a fancy back scratcher. It's a honing rod. Think of a knife edge like a row of tiny teeth. Every time you use the knife, those teeth bend slightly out of alignment. They're still there, they're just pointing the wrong way. Honing doesn't remove metal, it straightens those teeth back into position. It's more like combing messy hair than cutting it. Here's how simple it actually is. Hold the honing rod straight up on a cutting board. Place the knife against it at about a 20-degree angle. That's roughly the angle of a pizza slice, not flat, not vertical. Then slide the knife down and across the rod. Do that 5 times on each side. That's it. No sparks. No strength. No danger if you're paying basic attention. The entire process takes about 30 seconds. Professional chefs do this constantly, not because they're fancy, but because it saves time. A sharp, aligned knife is safer than a dull one. When knives are dull, people push harder. That's how accidents happen. Here's the part that feels unfair. That expensive knife you've been thinking about buying, it will get dull too. And it will need honing just as often as the cheap one. Buying better tools doesn't remove the need to maintain them. But no one tells you this because it's easier to sell replacements than education. So instead, people quietly struggle. They avoid cooking certain foods. They assume they lack skill. They work around a problem that could be fixed in half a minute. Once you learn to hone a knife, something interesting happens. Cooking becomes easier, cutting feels smoother, your confidence improves not because you magically became a better cook, but because your tools are finally doing their job. This isn't about becoming a chef. It's about realizing that difficulty often comes from neglect, not incompetence. You weren't bad at cooking. You were just using a bent tool and blaming yourself for it. And once you stop doing that, the kitchen stops feeling like an enemy. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this, it's simple. You were never bad at these things. Most hard skills aren't actually hard. They're just simple ideas, explained badly, wrapped in intimidation, or quietly removed from everyday life. Once you notice that pattern, you start seeing it everywhere. And here's the interesting part. This playlist isn't really about cards, juggling, sewing, knives, or any of that. It's about recognizing how often we underestimate ourselves. In the next parts, we'll keep pulling on that thread. We'll talk about skills you were told require talent, confidence, or special personality traits, and why that story doesn't hold up. You'll start seeing how many limits you accepted without ever questioning where they came from. Some of the next episodes will feel uncomfortable. Some will feel oddly reassuring. A few might make you realize, wait, I could have been doing this the whole time. That's the point. So if this video made you rethink even one small thing, stay with the playlist. Each part builds on the last, not by piling on information, but by slowly removing the nonsense that convinced you certain doors were never meant for you. You don't need motivation. You don't need confidence. You don't need permission. You just need to keep watching. I'll see you in the next part. This playlist isn't done yet. In the next parts, we'll keep breaking down skills people were told they weren't built for, and why that story doesn't hold up. But before you move on to the next one, I'm curious about something. What's a basic skill you already know how to do that people are always weirdly impressed by? Something you thought was normal until someone reacted like it was magic. Drop it in the comments. Not to show off, but to remind other people they're probably closer than they think. If any of this felt familiar, stick with the playlist. There's more of this coming. I'll see you in the next part.